Hello all. First of all, I would like to talk about my previous video regarding PES and Invictus launch week. After listening to it a few times, I've come to the conclusion that it wasn't up to the standards that I aimed for. Even though I had a script, I literally went off script, and my brain was racing to go through everything I wanted to talk about, without necessarily following some kind of logical path. I only wanted to share my thoughts as soon as possible, and for that, quality was lacking. Sure, I could just use the easy excuse of it is my first commentary video, but I believe I could have done a better job. Just by doing more takes, reviewing my video, editing it before publishing. Truth be told, it was a humbling experience, one that lets you know that on a single attempt, you won't meet the gold standard that you are aiming for and is expected. So I'll try to stick to the script and avoid ad-libbing too much until it becomes second nature, and record the audio and video content separately, so I can edit the audio track and remove dead air and other such nuisances. I'm just going through what many YouTubers have gone through in their early days. So, here's to learning through experience. Today's topic is about Star Citizen's rather unorthodox development cycle and its live operation during the alpha and later stages of development. But let's go back a few decades before proceeding any further. In the good old golden days of PC gaming, there were a few fantastic space shooter games, sometimes even called space sims, like X-Wing, TIE Fighter, Wing Commander, Free Space, and others. But there wasn't really a game where you would both fly ship and do whatever you wanted. All of the aforementioned games were space combat games. You were in a fighter or bomber, completing missions after missions until the story came to an end. None of them were sci-fi sandboxes, even if they had branching campaigns. And this is where Chris Roberts comes in with a new project, following the successes of Wing Commander series and Starlancer, that we know as Freelancer. His first truly sci-fi sandbox. Sure, it had a story which was very much linear, but you had moments where you could just do whatever you fancied. Running mission for a faction, be on the other side of the law and raid traders or mine minerals in asteroid fields, and if you were an aspiring tycoon, you could always find trade routes to buy and sell your wares throughout the known space. Chris's vision was grand at the time, having a real star system where planets would orbit the star, and each planet had their own day-night cycle, with independent AIs tooling to produce, transport, protect, or fight in all areas of the known territories. But alas, the tech wasn't there to accomplish such an ambition. Game development is akin to art, but it is also a business. There is always the never-ending feud between creative talent and the money people, because the later a change happens, the more costly it can be, both financially and in manpower. Without deadlines, games would never be released, as the creative talent would seek their own version of the perfect game, even if it would bring the studio to the very edge of bankruptcy. Through the established model of game development, Chris' vision would not see the day. Fast forward about a decade, the technology vastly improved, from software rendering to hardware rendering, faster CPUs, and more capacity with better speeds on storage devices. The time for Chris's magnum opus had come. It all started with a very successful Kickstarter campaign, reaching multiple stretch goals on just what was essentially an elevator pitch. Sure, Chris had the global vision of the project, since he already thought of them when creating Freelancer, but it needed more. Why create just another sci-fi sandbox when there were already a few out or announced by then? EVE Online, Elite Dangerous, and multiple smaller indie titles. What more can it bring? Let's go with A Second Life in Space. We all know the promises that Chris made during the early days of Star Citizen. There are plenty of videos where he essentially pitched features during CitizenCon with very context-specific demos, or just from the top of his head during roundtables or Q&As. And the promised feature list only grew on what seemed to be a daily basis. Sure, the feature list is more or less stable now, but due to years of promises being added, focus was lost early, and working on vertical slices and prototype doesn't get you functional features. Lately, we had some improvement, like the mining gameplay update and basic salvage feature. But what we saw in their development was more of a series of rapid but sporadic allocation of developers to tackle these features. It looks like they are completely working in a strike force mindset. We have to work on this for a while to quell the naysayers, and we can then proceed and do the same thing on another feature. We often joke in the industry that it is like trying to have a baby in a month using 9 mothers. In real terms, it is essentially a management tactic that rarely works as they wish for. How often do we see a ship or feature in a roadmap come to a brutal stop, only to resurface months later? Quite a few times. Sure, having a limited number of designers for ships does limit their output, but we don't currently need 13 ships fulfilling the same function. 2 or 3 would have been enough. And why have luxury version of some vehicles? They don't currently bring any tangible gameplay as of yet. They only promote showing off how big a player's wallet is. This fractured timeline only consumes more time and money, pushing the release date further and further away, or even worse, could bring cuts to promised features for the MVP. And we have somewhat seen that stated by Chris on the number of star system upon release, for example. But how can they finance these overruns and attempts to get most, if not all, of the features in? You guessed it, through operating the alpha and beta like a live game. Star Citizen needs to feed the machine, with the prospect of new tantalizing ships and vehicles, ready to use or not. Without new offers, how can they have old backers invest more and more? How can they entice new players during the free fly events? We are presented with concept ships that can't serve a purpose yet, or that could even break systems if they are released early. Why attempt to get the OLC ready for maybe 3.20? We only have 1 star system to trade in, and a OLC will likely empty a production facility in 1 trip, or fulfill the demand of a station with only half of its capacity. Thus, players with C2s or smaller ships will have to wait for the facility to have enough inventory to fill their ship, or wait for the demand to be high enough to let them sell products. And we've all heard some people complain about the Banu Merchantman being delayed. But now it's not the time to release it. Not even close. Even with server meshing. The OLC, the OLE Merchantman require multiple solar systems to have efficient trading with those ships. And this has been the very core of the problem with Star Citizen and running it as a live game during its development. Creating ships and vehicles before features and systems are ready, because the former brings in the cash, and just selling the base game wouldn't bring in as much. Personally, I don't want any more ships. There are plenty enough right now for what little features we have. Stop doing new concept and get features and systems done. Only then we can come up with concept ships that use those features. In the past, I did buy an Apollo and a Galaxy with a medical module because I thought medical gameplay was improving. But sadly, it didn't. We only had a new vehicle, the C8R, and the addition of the rescue beacons, which is not a big improvement of the feature, and we already had a Cutlass Red. I'm no longer buying concept ships. I've even exchanged them and got ships that I can fly and have some fun with it. I spent enough for a long while, and I'm likely not the only one. Alright folks, go away now. Just go and raid Jumptown and get your fix in. And remember, it is good business when you don't partake in your questionable product.